Big Brother has been captivating audience for 27 seasons. And let me say that again, 27 seasons. The one constant among all the backstabbing and conniving and showmances has been none other than its host, Julie Chen Moonves. Julie got her start in local and network news, eventually co hosting The Early Show on CBS from 2002 to 2010, then hosting The Talk for 8 seasons, all while keeping the Big Brother house guests in a constant state of drama. Big Brother is back for a special summer edition called Hotel Mystere, airing on CBS on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. and also on Paramount Plus. Julie Chen, so good to see you, looking amazing as always.
Thank you, Melissa. Same to you,
Oh,
and it is an honor to be here.
so I have known you since, I hate to say this, well before Big Brother, but
Yes.
and I mean, you were a fixture and still are in traditional network TV news long before Big Brother. I gotta know, I've never asked you this. How was the show pitched to you?
Oh, first of all, I wasn't first choice,
Really?
and I didn't know that at the time.
Who was?
Meredith Vieira,
Again, traditional news person.
which they wanted a news person to quote unquote class up the show
Uh-huh.
because they thought it could be, a little bit trashy maybe at times. And I was doing morning news at CBS News, and I get called in for a meeting with the then head of news who tells me about it. And at this point, like Survivor had been on for maybe like 2 weeks, huge success. And as they're describing the show to me, I had only been at the network for about 8 months, and my dream was to one day be a 60 Minutes correspondent. And I said, if I take this job, will I ever be allowed to be on 60 Minutes? And to his credit, the head of CBS News back then, he said, probably not. And I said, oh, well, thanks for your honesty. I said, well, then I'm turning it down because that's my dream. And then he says, you work for the company, and technically we could assign this job to you, and if you turn it down, it could be looked at as insubordination. And I said, well, when's the next flight to LA? Love to host this reality show.
You know what? Now that I think about it, okay, when you were taping the very first season, w did you say to yourself, "There is no way this is gonna work"?
Oh, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. Like to do a scripted reality show, the whole genre was so new. And the writing season one was not stellar. And I had to say things like time to spill the beans, like use language I would never use. And being a news person, you write your stories, you report on your own stories, it's your words. And you're just kinda giving the facts, and, like, to do this strange genre was so foreign to me, and the critics hated everything about the show, down to the lighting, and the plywood IKEA furniture, and me, the host, and I had critics write terrible things about me and the show, and then I had internally Andy Rooney back then go to the New York Post and say that I should be immediately fired from the news division and shipped off to the West Coast and permanently put in entertainment because according to him, I was single-handedly like blurring the lines between news and entertainment.
I love the fact that he said that. I hope someone at News then said to him, "We basically told her she had to."
And by the way, he doesn't do journalism. He gives opinion
Right.
on he's like the original Seinfeld. He talked about nothing and made it something. And not to mention, hello, Mike Wallace, who was a 60 Minutes fixture and like the face of it for so long, before 60 Minutes, he hosted a game show. And so did Hugh Downs, who was host of 2020. And
Smoking by the way, smoking through the whole thing.
yes, and if not, maybe I think Mike Wallace might have also done cigarette commercials.
Isn't that the best, the hypocrisy we've all lived through and continue to live through. Um, Obviously,
Yes.
there's been a ton of changes in Big Brother, especially
Yeah.
going into this season, because it's really off to a strong start with a big twist this year, and
So
it's like a mystery. Who said, "Let's do it this way"?
I have to give credit to the two showrunners, Alison Grodner and Rich Meehan. You know, the fact that they brought in a 17th house guest who is a past winner, and hasn't done it in 14 years. I mean, Rachel Reilly was polarizing back then. You know, when she first did it, she was a single girl. She fell in love and she ended up marrying the man of her dreams, Brandon, who she has two kids with. And then they came back together and did it the following summer, and that was 14 years ago, and she won. And she won after having the whole house against her. He got voted out pretty early on, and with her back up against the wall, I mean, she was bold and in your face and didn't care about making friends and playing nice and not a phony. Can she do it again? I mean, I'm rooting for her, you know. So that was a big surprise. It was a surprise to me when they told me who it was going to be. I had, ideas and guesses, but I never thought she'd like leave her family for 3 months and, try something that she's already accomplished. And I want to say, didn't they go on to win Amazing Race together? Something like that?
I don't
Anyhow,
the casting process is always fascinating to me, and at this point, you have to be able within 5 minutes, this person's gonna do well, this person isn't gonna do well. What I find so interesting right now is, well, 2 things. 1, people know how to play. They study the show, yet they come on and do really stupid things. Do
I
you
know,
look
but
back and just go like, "Have you ever watched?" I'm just curious, just asking.
that's ego. That is when your ego gets in the way. And you think and don't forget, people get drunk with power, when they become head of household, if they become it, they forget next week they're gonna be, riding the Greyhound with everybody else. They're gonna come out of their private room, um, and they get ahead of themselves, and they think they're smarter than they are, and they overplay their hand. Um, but yes, because people study the game and they go in as, super fans, that's why we have to kind of keep it fresh and throw like new elements of the game at them every season, new surprises and twists, which is why we say expect the unexpected. And I think they like that because it feels fresh and new to them.
I'm always also amazed that, again, and I see this on so many shows, why do people think their bad behavior isn't gonna be seen? And suddenly they come out and go like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Have you again, and you see this all the time on shows, you're like, "We're
I
gonna see when you act like an ass."
I feel like people live in their little bubble, and that bad behavior is, acceptable, and then they get put into this house with personalities that are people they normally don't hang out with, and then they get schooled like, "Oh, you mean that's not cool to do that?" I mean, one season we had a girl go there and do an Asian accent and pretend she worked at the manicurist, and it was in a derogatory way. And like, hello, have you seen the host of the show? You
Important
know?
safety tip.
Yeah, let's start there. So, and I just think people, they truly don't know better. They don't think of themselves. No one thinks of themselves as bad.
No, but still, it's like on other shows you watch, you go, all your worst behavior is gold for a producer.
Oh, I know.
And then
I know.
they go, "I can't believe it." Anyway, but that's just a general thing about I don't understand why people think that. I also find it really interesting now that people think going from show to show to show is a career, and they're
Be
all doing
it
it from show to show.
is.
Could
I
you
know.
could you imagine if you said to your parents when they say, "What do you wanna do?" and you're like, "I am gonna become a reality show champion and do all of them."
I mean, if they're bringing home the bacon, I guess so. And if they're meeting like their future spouse, which by the way, the secret is Big Brother has had more marriages than The Bachelor. We're not even a dating show, let alone a show that advertises find your future mate. But yeah, or they become, or not even shows. They go on cruises and they go at to events and they become celebrities for that make these celebrity appearances.
I find that so interesting with our how people watch TV. And you were one of the original hosts of The Talk. And you
Yes.
weren't just with the original, you were in the anchor chair, which brought you kind of back to the idea of news.
Yes, it did, but it was very challenging for me that first season because when I did news, I never gave my opinion about anything we were talking about. And I thought, oh, this moderator slot is safe for me because I don't have to. But the producer said, and I think rightfully so, like, you got to get in there and weigh in. And that was something that you know, took a lot for me to get used to doing. And by the end of my run, which is after 8 years, to I learned not to take myself so seriously. I knew, when to weigh in and how to do it and just have a great time doing it. So, but I always loved, because of my news background, when there was a breaking news story, being live, delivering it, just like my news days, and like getting the information in my earpiece and, saying this just in. I loved it. I loved it.
It's a hard job, and I don't think people realize how few moderators, whatever, have sat in that anchor chair and been successful. You, Barbara, Meredith, and Whoopi. Yet there's been so many. What makes though I mean, not Barbara, but the other 2 good at it and as good as you were at it?
Being a good listener. If you notice, Whoopi often doesn't weigh in. She often just kind of throws it out there. When you're the moderator, you have to let, I always say, I have to set up everyone else to shine. And if there's time before the commercial break, then I will jump in, and Whoopi has, look, Whoopi, she's an Oscar winner. She has no ego, so she doesn't have to have her, FaceTime, if you will. And Meredith comes from 60 Minutes in News, where she's used to putting things out there and having everyone else give the soundbite. So I think, and then most of all, you need a team that respects you and respects each other, because you got to hear from the others on the panel as well. So, but you have to, like Joy Behar always said about Barbara, however people felt about her on that panel, they respected her and she kept a lid on the crazy. That was the quote. And she kept a lid on the crazy. So you have to have that also.
Yet nowadays, we all gravitate to the crazy,
True. I mean, the crazy, it's like the squeakiest wheel, right?
but that's who becomes famous off shows like Big Brother.
Always. Those are the memorable ones.
So you really have had such a diverse career
What's next? No,
in
yeah.
in a wonderful way.
Yeah, it's so unexpected because, when I went to journalism school, my dream was 60 Minutes, as I said earlier. And then reality television didn't even exist when I had started my career. So there wasn't that to aspire to. And then to get asked to do it and then told then told to do it. And then daytime the daytime talk show space, that came out of, I had been doing news for over a decade, and I had just had a child, and like I didn't want to do those morning hours, and that really popped up on my doorstep, surprisingly. And with the success of The View, we decided to kind of do our own version and, our own rip-off version, but not fight. So we're not going to talk about politics. And that was a pleasant surprise, and I had a great time doing it. So I have to say, being a broadcaster in these three very different, and all very, I don't know, it's in me. to have had a chance to show myself in these 3 different lights, it's really been a blessing and an honor. Who I would have never guessed it.
Well, and fun.
And fun. I have to say the talk was the most fun because at our best, we were just a bunch of like loudmouth yentas, like yucking it up and like being bawdy and silly and not taking ourselves seriously. And, it was a really eclectic group. Like we like to call ourselves a motley crew. We had one of everything, and it was really, really fun.
I was lucky enough to do the show a few times with that original group, and it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. The guests left like, oh, that went so fast. Like, I'd love to come back. I'd love to guest host because it was a fun environment, whether you were part of the staff or just a guest or cooking or promoting a project, whatever it was. It was a fun place to be.
You also really had really good swag bags, just saying.
Yes. Yes.
I do
Need
wanna
a blow
add.
dryer or a Keurig? We got it.
It
Suitcase
was
vacation, whatever.
it was great, and I always judge a show by the swag bag. That's how you know, by the way, that's how you always know if a show is successful, what's in the bag.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you walk into the room and it's only snacks, you better start polishing your resume. It's
Yeah,
if you get,
exactly.
like, a sweatshirt and a water bottle, it's there that's a big time. That's a big show.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's here to stay.
I have to ask you about news.
Mm.
You started with Ted Koppel.
Mhm.
Well, first you went local news and then Ted Koppel. What was he like to work with? Because he is in the Mount Rushmore of newsmen.
Totally. Ted Koppel started as behind the scenes. He was the Beijing bureau chief for ABC News. And then when the Iran hostage crisis happened, this show that was kind of like this late night, let's see how many days, how many nights we go with the hostage crisis became like a special report that became an ongoing show. Working with Ted Koppel was incredible. Here was a fair um newsman who just he wasn't about his own celebrity or asking like a gotcha question for his own ego. He was about getting the facts out, and just that was a great learning ground for me. And that was, I started out actually as an intern there. So by the time I, got my first paying job as a reporter, having worked with him and the whole team, the producers and the bookers, it was just a great foundation for me. And I loved seeing that he's still on the air on CBS Sunday morning. There's no one like him.
A big thing just happened at 60 Minutes, and you've referenced 60 Minutes as being your dream back in the day. Um, a lo EP, the executive producer of 60 Minutes, resigned because he felt he could not do his job properly anymore, and this all comes on the heels of the CBS Paramount interview payout thing, and Scott Pelley, who really is the elder statesman now of 60 Minutes, shared his opinion as sort of a spokesperson for the show, and it was incredible how he threaded the needle. What do you think when you see that?
It gives me hope. I think when the EP he stepped down and stuck to his integrity, the question is, will he get picked up somewhere else? And if he does, then that would be a news source helmed by him that you can trust. And for Scott Pelley to, step forward and be critical, but thread the needle carefully, you know, that does take courage, and you have to admire that. So that gives me hope. I think that's a ray of, sunshine for this industry. So it's not dying. Look, I have to say the majority probably isn't happy about it. What's happening now, it's like, can they stick to their integrity or, walk away and take it somewhere else and have it thrive? I don't know. I do believe always in the light outshines the dark in any situation. And sometimes it's in darkness that that light shines the brightest.
On a lighter note, I finally feel like you are getting the respect that you have deserved for years. There was an article in Parade magazine which read, "Who is Julie Chen Moonves' husband?" And all I wanna say is, it's about fucking time someone said that asked the right question about that.
My day has come. Okay. This is so funny. My son is 15 and a half, and he got his first job and he's bussing tables. And my friend told me, she said, "Oh, okay. So the truth is, my friend owns the restaurant, and that's how I got the in." Okay. And she said, "I had my first staff meeting since, your son started working, since Charlie started working there. And they're all so impressed by him, but what they're more impressed by is they said, 'Oh my god, that's Julie Chen's son who that's Julie Chen's son who works here.'" And she said, "Well, you know who his father is?" And they were like, "We don't care. That's Julie Chen's son." And I was like, "My day has come."
I love that. I love you so much. Big Brother Hotel Mystere. CBS Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, woof, at 8 p.m. and streaming on Paramount Plus. Julie, always such an absolute pleasure to see you.
Same here, Melissa. I love you.
I love you
Big
to
hug and
death.
big kiss.
Thank you.